Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Ajnananjanhavitirtham Vidyatirtham Vivekinam Sarvesham Sukhadam Tirtham Bharati Tirthamashraye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvajnam Vidhushekara Bharati. Dear friends, today is the 13th session of our discussions on PRABODHA SUDHAKARA. So with a great sense of gratitude, I am happy to report that we have completed 12 sessions already, and it is exactly 1 year since we started. The first session was conducted on the day of Vardhanti of our Sri Sannidhanam Jagadguru Sri Vidhushekara Bharati Mahaswamigal. Today again we are having the great fortune of meeting once again on the Vardhanti day of our Sannidhanam. So with humble prostrations to the feet of the Acharyas, to our Jagat Gurus, and to Sharadambal, and to Adya Shankaracharya, let us continue our discussions. So we were in the process of looking at the fourth chapter, the fourth Prakaranam in this Prakarana Grantha. This was titled Vishaya Nigraha Prakaranam. Vishaya Nigraha means to withdraw from or to give up the sense objects. So as we have seen, the first several chapters are about attaining or the practice of Viveka and Vairagya. In that context, we are looking at discussions regarding Vishaya Nigraha, that is, giving up, how to give up the sense objects. So as the discussion progressed, Bhagavad Padal, we saw, presented various. So as the discussion progressed, we saw Bhagavad Padal had presented a number of verses on how the human mind becomes attracted towards the various Vishayas via the sense organs, and the issues or the difficulties and the anartha, that is the obstacles in the spiritual path which are arising out of the attachment towards the sense objects, were slowly pointed out to us by Bhagavad Padal. So keeping that in mind, we will continue the discussion of these verses. Presently, we were looking at verse number 60 in the last meeting. We will continue with verse number 61 today. Let us read. Vishayendriyayor yoge nimesha samayena yat sukham bhavati vishaye nashte dukkham yavat जीवं च तत्तयोर मध्ये हेयं उपादेयं वा प्रविचार्य सुनिश्चितं तस्मात् अल्पसुखस्य त्यागात् अनल्पदुःखं जहाति सुधीः. So a beautiful couple of verses, a deeply meaningful couple of verses that is worth contemplating over again and again are given to us by Bhagavad Padal. Vishayendriyayor yoge nimesha samayena yat sukham bhavati. So in this first verse, the process of how Vishaya Sukha, that is the joy, or you can say the pleasure which is gained through the sense objects, is being described. The method of gaining the pleasure is being described as an observation. So how does this pleasure get attained? Vishaya Indriyayor Yoge. So two things have to be there. Dvaitam is the default here for attaining this pleasure. What are the two things here? Vishaya and Indriya. First, you need the sense objects which are external to the body or external to the sensory organs. And the secondary thing, and the second thing which is required is the sense organs themselves. So there is a pair which has to temporarily merge together, Vishaya and Indriya, sense organs and sense objects have to come in contact with each other. Vishaya Indriyayor Yoge. Yoga here stands for coming into contact, temporarily coming into contact. Nimesha samayena yat sukham bhavati. So nimesha samayena yat sukham bhavati. So in the instant that the sensory organs connect with the sensory objects, the sense organs connect with the sensory objects, in that instant or for some very small period of time, there is a joy, there is a pleasure which is gained and experienced by the human mind, by the mind, you can say. So this temporary pleasure that is being referred to in this first half of the first verse, 61st verse. So there is a time period allocated to this joy or pleasure. As and when you put the sweet in your mouth, there is a sweetness which happens, and this taste of sweetness brings some pleasure to the mind. So the nature of this pleasure always during the experience of joy, the nature of this pleasure, if you observe, essentially you can say it is an experience in which, at least for the instantaneous moments that the sensory object and the sense organ are in contact with each other, for those instantaneous moments, no matter what other difficulties are there which are in the background of our life, just for an instant or for a few moments as the contact happens, these difficulties are receding to the background. So you don't remember or recollect these difficulties during the moments of the happiness, during the moments of the pleasure. So before the pleasure happens, there are other thoughts in the mind. Before the sense organs happens, there are other thoughts in the mind. After some moments, after the contact happens, there are other kinds of thoughts which happen in the mind. During the moment of contact, there is a unique experience. Let us say, like eating a sweet, then you experience that sweetness, and that experience of sweetness is very intense for a few moments as and when the contact happens, and this intense experience of sweetness brings some pleasure to the mind. So this is the instantaneous or momentary nature of this sensory pleasures, and all sensory pleasures are exactly like this. Only the time period may vary from very small microseconds to a few seconds, or at the most about 10 or 15 seconds. This is the nature of all pleasures which can be experienced through the sense objects, the sensory organs. If you want to experience more, then you have to increase the time of contact, right? So keep increasing the time of contact, then you can experience that kind of pleasure for a longer time. But no matter how much you try and do this, this particular kind of pleasure which comes through the sense organs coming into contact with the sensory objects is always having various faults. Inherently, they come with various faults, or you can say the durguna, right? The problems, the problematic aspects of this pleasure. What is the first problematic aspect? This pleasure is temporary in nature. That is the first problematic object. It is well understood by all people. In spite of that, we don't stop going behind this pleasure, this kind of pleasure. That is the very nature of the human beings, it looks like. But Why do we call this as a fault then? Fault means something wrong, right? Something which we do not uh, admire in that experience. That is what is called a fault. So the temporal nature, the time-bound nature of this sensory pleasure is called a fault, because when the sensory pleasure goes away, as and when it is going away, there is a sense of dukkha which is triggered in the mind. Yo, it is going away. Hare Ram, it is going away. Why is it going away from me? I was experiencing this happiness for so long time. Now it has gone away from me. Like that, there is a sense of sorrow. There is a sense of lack of fulfillment. Temporary fulfillment was gained through the experience of the sense objects. Immediately as it goes away, and it was the nature of these pleasures is to go away, is to disappear. As and when it disappears, it leaves behind a sense of lack of fulfillment. I was fulfilled by the sensory objects, now it is not available with me, so therefore I am not fulfilled anymore. I have become now another same old incomplete person that I was before. Before experiencing the sense object, I was an incomplete person. During the momentary experience of the pleasure due to the sensory objects, I was a complete person. All the sorrows had fallen off from my mind. All other thoughts had fallen off from my mind. I saw myself very temporarily as a fulfilled entity. When this sensory object goes away from me, I have again become filled with lots of thoughts about the world, lots of thoughts about my life, lots of thinking about what is going to happen, what has happened, all kinds of fear, guilt, sorrow again enters the mind, right? Worry, you can say. I was without worry temporarily because of the pleasure. Now I am again with worry. I have become unfulfilled person again. And this is what is called dukkha. What is dukkha? I experience myself as an unfulfilled person. I experience myself as a person who is not comfortable with my situation. This is dukkha. This experience comes back immediately as the sensory pleasure goes away. So that defect is primary defect that is being spoken about in the next verse. Next half of the verse. Vishaye nashte dukkham yavat jivam tatayor madhye. So tatayor madhye is coming to be attached to the next verse. So Vishaye nashte dukkham yavat jivam cha. So Vishaye nashte, there is one dukkham. When the Vishaya is extinguished or exhausted due to the experience, or in the process of experiencing the in the process of getting in contact with the sense organ, the Vishaya slowly recedes back into the experience. It is extinguished, right? It is exhausted. The experience is exhausted. The sensory object therefore is removed from the experience. So Vishaye nashte. What happens? Dukkham comes into the picture. So dukkham bhavati. By the extinguishing or the exhausting of the sense object, the dukkham comes. Again, I experience myself as an unfulfilled person. Then this another kind of dukkha is there. When the object has gone away, again the same object which has gone away cannot be experienced anymore. If you have eaten a particular sweet, the same sweet is not going to be experienced once again by you. You can eat, one laddu is over, you have eaten it and you have got some happiness out of it, pleasure out of it. Okay. If you want to experience the same experience again, you have to eat another laddu, another sweet you have to take. Similarly, okay, laddu you ate for some time, now you want to, you feel bored by the laddu. So that is another problem, right? The same experience, even though once upon a time it was giving you happiness, if you continuously keep trying to get the same amount of happiness from the same kind of object, it is not going to give you. This is another defect. So therefore, the very nature of the sensory pleasure is that you want to have different kinds of experience. So the next time the same thing will not come. You cannot have it. You cannot get the same joy out of the same thing again. One point being, the thing will not be there anymore. So this is a long term. So Acharya Bhagavad is saying that this is going to trigger a long term loss, sense of loss. Yavat jivam cha dukkham. That is second one. So as you cannot enjoy the same object again any other time in your life. That object is already destroyed. It is already been consumed. Therefore, it is not present anymore. It is not available anymore to be experienced or enjoyed again. And when an object is not available to be enjoyed again, it triggers a sense of sorrow which is there throughout life. That is why as people grow older, you find that they report, I was like this long time back. I had these very enjoyable experiences long time back. Now I am not able to enjoy it in the same way anymore. So this the very sense of enjoyment which was triggering happiness a long time ago produces sadness because of the inability to enjoy after some time. So yavat jivam cha dukkham bhavati. First dukkha is because the sensory object goes away and instantaneously, aha, it is gone, aha, it is not available anymore. Instantaneous dukkha is there. Second dukkha, no more in your life the same object will be available. So because of that, there is another kind of a deeper or a long-term sorrow is also there. Both are there. So there is dukkha also and there is instantaneous sukha. Which is bigger? Which is bigger? This analysis, which is more predominant, which is more affecting our mental state. Right. There is no doubt there is some pleasure, but there is a quantum or a great quantum of sorrow, a great quantum of unfulfillment, which is overriding the temporary, short-term, minimal sense of fulfillment, which is triggered in the momentary enjoyment of the sensory pleasures. This analysis is done by the person who has viveka, nitya anitya vastu viveka. By anitya vastu, I get only temporary happiness. I cannot get the permanent satisfaction. Moreover, by the temporary happiness producing entity, by the sense object which produces only temporary happiness, I get long-term unfulfillment. A long-term sorrow comes into the picture. So an intelligent person, the viveki, the person with viveka, chooses to give up the temporary joy so that together along with it the long-term sorrow can also be given up. To give up the long-term sorrow, you have to give up the temporary joy. If you say, I want temporary joy, but I don't want the long-term sorrow, that combination is not possible. Both of them come together. When the experience of the sense pleasures are there, both come together. The temporary joy comes along with the long-term sorrow, or the long-term sorrow comes together with the temporary joy. It is like the 1+ buy one get one scheme. We have heard of that, right? So if you buy one thing, automatically the shopkeeper will give us the next free item. Here also, if you spend time, invest energy into gaining sense pleasures, then with as a bonus, default free bonus, you also get long-term sorrow. So consider these two together, long-term sorrow and temporary joy together. You consider, pick which one you want to or what you want to do. Can you give up one without giving up the other? It is not possible. So therefore you give up both. That is the suggestion. So second verse says, so first verse continues, Tattayor madhye हेयम उपादेयम वा प्रविचार्य सुनिश्चितं तस्मात् अल्पसुखस्य त्यागात् अनल्पसुखम् अनल्पदुःखं जहाति सुधीः. Sudhihi means the person who is possessed by who is having the quality intellect. That person who is having the appropriate buddhi shakti. What is meant by this quality intellect or appropriate buddhi shakti? So many people may be very intellectual, but their intellect is useful for gaining so many things in the world. Worldly fame and name and objects. Worldly objects, sense objects, worldly name and fame people get by employing their intellect. That is a dhihi. Just they are intellectual people, they are intelligent people, no doubt, but they are not sudhihi. Sudhihi here refers to those people who are possessed with the intellect, which is having the spiritual, which is helping them to lead a life of sadhana, which is helping them to distinguish the Nitya Sukha, Nitya Ananda and Anitya Sukha. That which gives only temporary pleasure, long-term sorrow is one category. Then there is the Atma Jnanam, the Atmananda or the Nityananda, which is the permanent joy or happiness, which is gained only via the gain of Atma Jnanam, the self-knowledge. So that kind of person who is able to distinguish between these two types of Ananda chooses the option of giving up the Vishayananda altogether. Therefore, the Vishaya Janita Dukkham is also given up altogether. The sorrow is also given up altogether. That kind of person. So, Tat Tayor Madhye Heyam Va Upadeyam Va Pravicharya. How does this person give up? Very carefully, this person observes what is the nature of this sense pleasures. By observation, the person deliberates, the intelligent person, the sudhihi, deliberates, heyam va upadeyam va, tattayor madhye, between these sorrow and happiness, which is gained through sense organs, through the sense objects, which one can we take or which one can we leave? We cannot take both. If you want, you can take both. If we want, we can give up both. We cannot choose to take only one half of it. We cannot pick only the temporary happiness and say we will not, we don't want to experience the sorrow. It is 1+1 scheme. It is buy one get one free scheme. So that scheme, you cannot avoid getting both together. So pravicharya sunishchitam bhavati. Such a person becomes very determined and he deliberates and attains a decision. Very decisive person he becomes. And what is the decision here? What is the conclusive judgment? He says that he decides alpasukhasya tyagad analpadukham jahati. He decides to give up the temporary pleasure and their alpasukhasya tyagad. By giving up the temporary pleasure, you can also give up the analpadukham jahati. So temporary means alpa means very limited pleasure. So momentary pleasure, limited pleasure, short-term pleasure, alpa it is. It is that quantum of pleasure is very small. It's very time limited. But the quantum of dukkha, if you give that quantum of pleasure up, the small amount of pleasure, if you give it up, then you can also give up analpa dukkha, which arises due to the loss of this object. The long term, the huge amount of sorrow which you may gain due to attachment to these objects can be given up. This is the decision which the sudhihi comes and comes to. The sudhihi comes to this particular decision and gives up both of them together. That's the message here. Very important verse. Very important verse, because here the thinking capability of the Vedanta sadhaka Vedanta sadhaka means what? Anybody who is in the Dharma Marga, Sanatana Dharma Marga, and who can think what is good for me, what is bad for me, what is the Shastra saying about these things, how I have to lead my life to gain the highest good. If you can think that, then you are a sadhaka. Very basic minimum requirement. If you are not thinking, just going about the routine in your life, then there is no sadhana there. If you are thinking a little bit, then you become a thinking person. A thinking person who can, who is also doing all the regular activities according to dharma. That kind of person, how he proceeds in the Vedanta Marga, how how he or she carries forward in the Vedanta Marga, that is being talked about here. So thinking is required. Thinking is required. So some amount of just, what do you say, going through the rituals. Beyond that, ability to master your mind, ability to master your sense organs by understanding, not by kind of a force, but by understanding the reality behind, or understanding the facts or truth behind the nature of the sensory objects, the sadhaka has to proceed. So control or mastery of mind proceeds by understanding, not by force, not because, just because somebody told. No, understand and therefore attain peace. This is the whole idea behind the Vedanta itself. Wherever you see Vedanta, definitely inspires and demands and encourages clear understanding, clarity of thinking. By clarity of thinking, everything is understood, everything is gained. Jnanam itself. So that is why it's called knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is nothing but clarity of thought. Previously, we understood something to be something else. Now we see that what we understood that way is wrong, and therefore there is some correct understanding. So you gain that understanding, that is knowledge. Right? That idea is being reinforced here, very important verses. So let us continue. And some beautiful examples are given both in this chapter and the following chapter. We have seen many such analogies and metaphors are being given by Acharya. By contemplating on these examples, we also get lot of clarity. We also get lot of connect to what is the kind of thing which is required here. So here there is an example which illustrates the dangers of getting attached to the sense organs, to continuously demanding that I want to experience sensory pleasures. What are the dangers from that? That is being talked about here. Dhivara Mahamishamashnan Vaisarino Mriyate Tatvad Vishayan Bhunjan Kala Krishto Narah Patati. So here Vishayan Bhunjan Kala Krishto Narah Patati. What is this? By experiencing the various Vishayas, the various sensory objects, the person, Naraha, becomes swallowed up whole again and again by the jaws of death. Kala Krishtaha Patati. Continuously he becomes eaten away by death. He becomes consumed by death. What does that mean? He gives himself up to this Punarjanma process. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam process. Again and again he goes through this samsara, and that is called fall. So Patati means what? The fellow falls into the pit of samsara again and again, into the jaws of death. Kala Krishta. He is grabbed by death again and again and falls into the pit of samsara again and again by the experience of the sense objects. For this, a beautiful example is given here. Just like the fishes are caught by the fishermen by the process of giving them a bait. So Mahamishamashnan Vaisarino Mriyate Dhivara Datta Mahamishamashnan. So Dhivara here stands for fishermen, those the anglers, those who are catching the fish. Dhivara Dattam. So what are they doing? They attach a bait to their fishing hook and put it in the water and shake it. So the fish is getting attracted to this fishing, the bait which is attached to the hook, and by catching hold of the bait, they get caught. So Vaisarino Mriyate, Vaisarinaha means fishes. Vaisarino Mriyate means what? They are killed, they are caught and killed by Dhivara Datta Mahamisham Ashnan. Ashnan means by grabbing, by eating, by consuming the Mahamisha, the quantity of bait or meat which is provided to them by the fishermen. In pursuing this, in trying to capture that bait, in trying to capture that pieces of meat which is provided by the fishermen as a bait, they don't know it is a bait, but they are attracted towards it, and they are grabbing it. As and when they are grabbing it, they are caught and killed. So Vaisarino Mriyate, the fishes are killed when they eat Ashnan, when they eat or when they grab hold of the Dhivara Mahamisha, the meat which is presented to them by the fishermen. In the same way, here the sense objects, Vishayan, the sense objects are the meat which is presented to the human being, and in trying to consume that sense objects, these people are getting caught. The people who are trying to consume the sensory objects, who are attracted to the sensory objects, they are grabbed by the fisherman, who is the Kala, the god, the death, you can say. Kala grabs them again and again, and they fall into the pit of samsara. Very important verse. As and when you experience, so if you study the Vedantic scriptures, we understand it is not that physical process of death that is alone being talked about here, right? It is also as you enjoy the sense objects, as you get attracted by the sense objects, there is a development, or there is a reinforcement of avidya in the mind. There is a reinforcement of wrong understanding in the mind. What is the wrong understanding? That I am the body, I am the mind, and I require pleasure. The body and mind have their own requirements of consumptions, but the person has to be alert and stay away from these demands of the body and mind. Like, for example, it is very natural for us to enjoy some sweet, but we know if you lot of consumption of sweet is there, it is tasty only, no doubt. The body enjoys it, no doubt. The mind also enjoys it, no doubt, until some time at least. But even that amount of consumption done every day will result in diabetes, will result in lot of problems in the long term. These problems are issues which come due to the enjoyment continuously done itself. As and when the enjoyments are done, these problems, they don't report that they are coming, they report it only slowly. So it is not that when you eat a laddu, immediately a warning sign also goes up saying, if you eat the laddu, you will get diabetes. Nobody is giving that warning sign. It is our duty or our responsibility to remember that excess consumption of sweet causes various health issues in the long term. Who has to remember it? We have to remember it. Nature doesn't provide that input directly as you are consuming that sweet. Nature may provide an input after a prolonged period of time. If you keep consuming, nature will say no more because I am failing. It will tell you by revealing to you that you already developed the problem. Before developing the problem, nature doesn't give us warning sign. So same way, when the Vishayas are being enjoyed, there is no warning sign immediately which tells us that this is going to cause you sorrow. As and when the enjoyment happens, the sorrow is not experienced. So the depth of sorrow is not experienced. Sorrow is collected over a period of time and one day it hits. That's the way it happens. So people have to be very careful about enjoying this sensory pleasures. As much as possible, don't go behind. As much as possible, don't enjoy. That is the message here. Right? Continuing. Another beautiful example. These examples are very powerful. If you keep them in mind, then that will itself help us to provide, that will itself help us to safeguard our mind from excessive attachment, excessive running behind sense objects. Contentment becomes natural if you remember these examples in your mind. उरगग्रस्तार्ध तनुर्भेको अश्नातीह मक्षिकाशतशः एवं गतायुरपि सन् विषयान् समुपार्जयत् अंधः. Another beautiful example. So here Gatayurapi san vishayan samuparjayati andaha. So that is the warning, that is the observation, the teaching which is being given to us. What does this mean? Gatayurapi, as and when the life is draining away, as and when the Gatayuhu api san, as and when the person's life is draining away, as and when the person is becoming older day by day, Gatayuhu bhavati, as and when this is happening, Vishayan samuparjayati, the person forgetting his real nature, forgetting what is the responsibility as having been given a human body, having attained a human body, having attained the great opportunity of getting a human body with capable thinking. Capable body is there, capable mind is there, power of thought is given to you, but the person uses it purely only for roti kapda makan and for enjoyments. Basic survival I want, sir, and I want to have a comfortable, pleasurable living. This is the normal state of affairs among the world and the worldly people. So this is the nature. Even though human body is given, first of all, it is not even being used for doing dharma. It is for used primarily for getting only artha and kama. Beyond, even if the person does dharma, then the moksha prayatna is not there. The body is being given ultimately for moksha prayatna. You have to struggle to get the moksha and become free from body altogether. For that purpose, body is given. But the person is forgetting all that and indulging in more and more kama only. And there is no end to this kama. Even if you eat 100 varieties of sweet, there is one more which you can try. Why not go for that? Even if you visit 100 kinds of places, there is one more which you have not visited. Why not go for that? So when does this ever end? Even if you lived for 1,000 years also, even then there will be more pleasures to be had, because that is the very nature of the way the world is structured. The world is structured in such a way that it is having infinite capacity to pleasure you in various ways. So there is no end to pursuing the pleasures. There is no end to going behind these sensory objects. But when you go behind the pleasures, when you go behind sensory objects, remember your lifetime is going away from you. What you came here to do, what is your responsibility, the opportunity what you have been given a human body for, the responsibility, you have a responsibility towards that. That is not being used by you. You are wasting your life if you go behind only artha and kama. Even only dharma you restrict, Vedanta will say you are wasting your life. Okay, sir, you lived a great life of dharma. Did you do moksha prayatnam? Okay, with dharma you will get punyam. With punyam you will get another life. But the goal of human birth is to end this cycle of birth and death itself, in that what is your effort? If you did not do that, then also this verse is criticizing those people also. We are not even at that level, but remember, so it is, criticism is stronger for us. So this verse calls all the people who are demanding only artha and kama, who are going behind only artha and kama, and also only dharma for the sake of better birth and so on, as andha. They are blind people. They don't see what is to be seen. In spite of having eyes, in spite of having capability to think, we still continue to be acting as though we don't see the truth. So that is andaha. So that kind of people, that is the nature of people we find in the world. Now the analogy we can see. What is the analogy? Uragagrasta ardhatanuhu bhekaha ashnati iha makshikaha shatashaha. Beautiful example. Some of you might have seen this kind of example even today also. What is this? Uragagrastaha ardhatanuhu bhekaha. So there is a ardhatanuhu uragagrastaha. So there is a bhekaha. There is a frog. There is a frog whose body has been half swallowed. Ardhatanuhu, half of the body, has become uragagrastaha. It's become swallowed by the snake. So the snake is in the process of eating the frog. Okay. If you open or if you look inside the mouth of the snake, so I have seen photos like this on the internet. If you open the mouth of the snake, hidden within that you will find a frog. So it is half swallowed. Oh, snake is opening the mouth. Frog's mouth is also see him. You can see it when the snake is still opening the mouth. So it is still alive. It is still active, but it is half swallowed. In spite of being in the jaws of death already, a few seconds it will go inside. In spite of being in the jaws of death already, it is still expecting. The frog, it seems, it is still expecting and trying to eat, and in fact eating many mosquitoes or many insects which are present around it. Makshikaha shatashaha ashnati iha ashnati. Half swallowed frog is trying to consume insects, mosquitoes, etc., which are around it by its own effort. What is the use? Whether you eat now or no, don't eat, what is the use? You are already, what is the use? When instead of trying to come out of the snake's mouth, instead of putting effort to try and come out of the snake's mouth, forgetting all this, you are thinking, the frog is thinking apparently. That is our imagination. The frog is thinking that, okay, I will be fine. Let me now have more to eat. Now I'm still hungry. Let me now have more to eat. When you are yourself, when the frog itself is becoming food, it is still demanding food. It still wants to eat more and more, it seems. So there is no point to this exercise. There is, there is a sense of, humor, a kind of dark humor which we find in this verse also, in some sense. Now, if you read or if you look at such a situation, you will find that the situation is bringing you sorrow also, because the frog is getting eaten. At the same time, there is amusement. What is happening here? Frog is getting eaten, at the same time it is trying to eat. What is the point? Like that we get amused, but we are also behaving in the same way. Even though we are within the jaws of death, because we have, as long as our real nature is not understood, as long as the Atma Jnana is not gained, we are in the jaws of death. Even though we are in the jaws of death, in spite of that, we continue to, desire for worldly pleasures instead of trying to come out of this ignorance or about the nature of the self. We try to get more embedded. We try to eat more. We try to enjoy more and become, in fact, more embedded in the jaws of death. So this is the comparison which Acharya is giving, and this is the warning which he is telling us. Don't be like this andaha people. Don't be like this blind people who go behind sense pleasures, forgetting the responsibility, forgetting the boon, the benefit of getting the human body. Don't be like this. So with this, we will conclude. We are concluding the Vishaya Nigraha Prakaranam, the warning. It concludes with the great warning. Remembering that warning and remembering the first verse, the first two verses we saw today regarding how we should conduct ourselves, giving up of both the pleasure due to the sense objects means giving up the long-term sorrow which happens due to the sense objects, and that is the nature of the really intelligent, spiritually intelligent person, keeping that positive message in mind that we will become free from sorrow by giving up the sensory objects, reminding ourselves of both the positive side of the teaching and the warning which is given to us by Bhagavad Gita. We will conclude today our meeting, and in the next meeting we will continue our discussion by going to the 5th chapter, which is Mano Nigraha Prakaranam. Here the idea is to withdraw the mind from sense organs. Previously, withdraw the sense organs from the sensory objects. Now withdraw the mind from various enjoyments, attachment to the sense organs, trying to experience joy through the world. These are very natural instincts to the mind. These are normal instincts to the mind. By denying this instinct, whenever this instinct comes, by telling your mind that don't behave like this, use your Viveka Shakti, using the Viveka Shakti by telling the mind that if you do this, then you will be in trouble. So keep yourself within yourself. Don't indulge in the worldly things. Do your duty, but beyond that, don't indulge in worldly things. By telling yourself like this, you can withdraw the mind from various worldly attachments and be with yourself. That is called Mano Nigraha. I have put here as distancing yourself from the mind. That is also required. So you have to recognize that you as an entity is different from the mind, and you can retain the control of the mind. Only that entity who is able to distance oneself from the mind. If I can differentiate myself from the mind, if I can view the mind as a tool, then I have the ability to control it. So first thing to do is view the mind as a tool, then you withdraw the mind, you gain the capability to withdraw the mind. Those messages will be discussed by Bhagavad Gita in the 5th chapter, which we will see henceforth in the next classes. With this, we will conclude today's meeting. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.